Yes, sir.
First, I would like to say that as a Jewish guy from Israel, the way you captured the Jewish music language is just perfect. Both on Schindler and Munich.
Thank you very much.
And also the Middle East music. Now, my question is about both Munich and Terminal. I feel that the language you are using is very different from all you did. I mean, I don't know how to express it, but in some way it's different technique, different language. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more?
I think approaching these films, my experience with them is always a very singular thing. And each one is a unique challenge to try to find mostly texture that would accompany the action and support the performers. In the case of Terminal, a pretty simple decision, really. The object was to try to create some kind of atmosphere of an imaginary Eastern European country that would be somewhere between Romania and Turkey or whatever, which would immediately suggest a clarinet. Because, so it's obvious, you could say. I mean, I didn't really invent the texture. It was just a reference to something that seemed historically and musicologically and geographically the right idea. It's interesting, particularly about the clarinet, which is the instrument of the shtetl. You know, it would be the klezmorim would always favor, I think, even before the violin, would have a clarinet, and the history that I've read, which is many years ago, goes back to the Fiddler era, when I did some looking into Jewish music while in Jerusalem. I always remember that the shtetl players of the clarinet got their clarinets and got this idea from the Turkish military bands. That's where they got the instruments and first heard them play. So then, of course, to accompany the clarinet and this idea to create that mythical, that imaginary country, the symbol, and again, from the Danube River, one of our countries there would be Hungary, or whatever, would be a good accompaniment to it. And so, hence that little dance piece for clarinet and orchestra, which seemed to be, I hope, right for. So that's about the direction and quality, really, the thinking, for better or worse. I don't know if any of you remember Emily Bernstein, she played the solo clarinet part in that piece, Terminal. So magnificent. And the sad part, Emily, she recently passed away. She was only about 42 years old. She was very young, very beautiful. And our principal clarinetist here. So everywhere, and she maybe 2 or 3 years ago now, every orchestra that I've gone to, the biggest one, Chicago, New York, the woodwind section coming into the dressing room, and they say, "Who is that clarinetist playing in Terminal? It's the most fantastic playing we ever heard." She was a student at Eastman. She graduated at Eastman. I think she did postgraduate work out here somewhere at Stanford, I believe. And maybe it's a pretty good piece, I don't know, little piece. She brought such an art to it. And I've done it with other clarinet, but I think Emily Bernstein was spiritually, especially gifted.
Over here. Yeah, you. How many and possibly which films evoke a feeling of like relief that you can be like, okay, well now I can do this style because I've been doing this style for so long, and this film came at the right time because now I can play around with something completely different.
Yeah, variety is the spice of everything, and I guess as the cliche has it, and it is true. I mean, I think one thing is to speak about Hollywood, earlier on in Hollywood, is that there was always a temptation to pigeonhole or composers, writers also, so that if you're pretty good at comedies, they would give you only comedies to do, and never ask you to do a dramatic film, and vice versa. And I think it's wonderful when you've been able to do some space operas that someone will then ask you to do a romantic piece or something that is atmospheric or impressionistic in some way, yes, it's a nice opportunity. I earlier on in our chat, I was referring to my early experience in the TV anthologies, which were, as I mentioned, 1 hour per week. And I loved doing that. Probably didn't do it very well. I couldn't have. But what was wonderful about it was that every week was a very different piece. It had to be done very quickly, within a week. And my career in feature films has been less varied than that. But I always welcome a film like Terminal, for example, would come along, or enjoy doing Munich very much. It's a very different kind of a challenge than some of the other adventure films which I've been associated with. So the opportunity for a variety, yes, always very, very welcome and helpful. It's energizing.
What would you say is the most unusual score you've ever written?
Well, I think Images, John. I don't know if these ladies and gentlemen remember that. It must be early 70s or 72. Robert Altman, who you probably know, and it was a film about a schizophrenic woman who, there were 3 murders in the film. She committed 2 of them. She felt she'd done all 3. She couldn't make the differences between her hallucinations and reality and so on. And we had no budget at all. So I wrote a score for a few strings, which we got from the BBC Symphony, and Stoby Yamashita, who I believe is still alive, is a Japanese percussionist, playing percussion, and I played the piano. So it was piano, percussion, and strings. And the percussion was non-tonal percussion. I'm afraid this is all going to go on too long. The late Bernard Bechet was a sculptor in Paris who created out of stainless steel shapes that could be excited and would make sound if you hit them. Some of them looked like sails, like ship sails, and they were as high as the ceiling, and they were connected by wire. So if you bow the wire, you excite both sails, with one sail with the other, and you get this beautiful sound. Pre-synth, mind you. Small ones, large ones, all kinds of metal apparatus. These are in museums all over Europe, sculptures of Bernard Bechet. And I went to the Modern Museum in New York once on route to do this film, and I went, and you could put a quarter in those days into a little machine, put a pair of headsets on, and look at the sculptures behind the glass. And the sculptures would play the Blue Danube Waltz horribly. but it could make pitch, and it could be played in more or less rhythm. And so when I looked at Bob's film, I thought, my God, for this schizophrenic woman, this means some wild sounds. Again, pre-synth, forever going to get this. If I can get the Bechet sculptures, it would be fabulous. So I went to Paris with Bob to get to Bechet's studio and said, can we rent any of these sculptures that I saw in New York? And he said to us, yes, you can rent them if you can insure them, and you can take them to London to record. He said, only if Stoneman Yamashita, the Japanese percussionist, is the only person I will allow to touch them. So, Ryan Stonewall, he's a graduate of Curtis or Eastman, one or the other, fine musician who I didn't know personally, knew about. He plays the bartok and showed up for 2 percussion by himself, with 4 mallets on his hand, his feet, and he's a bit. So he came to London, and we recorded the Bechet sculptures, the piano, the BBC strings for Images.
Separately and then overdubbed?
Stonewall did all the percussion. We had 8-track then, and we obviously probably had a couple of tracks of strings. I would say 2 or 3, and maybe 1 for piano, and 1 live. So we did strings, piano, and Stonewall live for whatever he could play and hit, and that would have filled 4 tracks. And we've had 4 tracks left for him to do metal, wood, wire, etc., and then mix them.
Was Altman?
They do things that are so much more sophisticated.
This is fascinating.
Well,
was Altman interested? Was Altman part of the process, or did he basically say, do whatever you want?
No, Altman is wonderful. I don't know if you people know him. No, he's a very brilliant guy who would just say, do whatever you want. I don't have any money, but just, don't spend any money, have some fun. Or he would say, as the more absurd it is, the better. So yeah, he's a great collaborator.
Just one second. Here.
So,
In regard to your career as a pianist, do you still play the classical literature of the piano?
I played the Mozart concerto with Seiji Ozawa maybe 10 years ago.
Which one?
A major. I must be 10 or 12 years ago. At a fundraiser house. I did a recording with Jesse Norman some years ago. But I don't play it much. I'm going to play the Tonight Show on February 4th. Stay up late. Playing some music from Geisha, so he would play all accompaniments. But writing is the worst thing in the world because when it goes to your hand, you end up with a hand.
Can I add something to what you're talking about? Sorry for playing something I personally.
Please.
We were mixing down at Fox, one of the cues from E.T. The piano part was beyond the realm of most players, as far as I'm concerned. You went out on stage and played it. You were the only composer I know of who could write it and play it.
Oh, I remember the piece. Yeah. Well, you know why, Ken? Because the poor pianist that comes to the recording, because I used to be one of them, get it over the head all the time. I would have it home so I could practice for 3 or 4 days, and I went to the stage knowing it very well.
That's all I know.
No, they were. Then we had Ralph Grierson, who was wonderful, and Gloria Chang recently did a little playing in Munich, but very touching, I thought. And
I just had to bring that up because you really good play.
well, thank you very much.
How do you conceptualize and realize your music when you're writing it? Do you have a particular process that you follow? How has that process changed throughout one project? Has it changed over the years? Is it very physical, very cerebral? Is it kind of a building block process,
Well, the way I work in film is probably also pretty unreconstructed in the sense that I just have a piano and I'm at a writing desk. And Ken or a music editor I may be working with is in my office at Amplin in the next room, and I would go in there every 20 minutes and build a sequence, maybe put some streams on it, or discuss a cue sheet if we have one, write 4 bars and go back. So it's pretty much in a straight ahead, a direct line. For film, there are exceptions, but the work I'm doing right now, I'm actually making a little suite for Yuri for Geisha, and it's a very different process because I'll have a beginning. I need to work out in most cases actually right at the end, do the working out later, having realized what the ending is going to be. A couple of cases, which, excuse me, rarely, but not even so rarely, this can work in film. And if you start with the last reel and not the first one, it's not rarely. I've done this actually fairly often, and particularly if it's melodic and thematic, and construct the last reel. It's a nice thing to be able to. You all know this trick to if you have a melody that has 12 notes, and you know the gestalt of the 12 notes at the end of the presentation of it. It's nice in reel 2 to give them 2 notes, and in reel 4 to give them 4, and in reel 6 to give them 6. But finally, when you get to reel 12 and you hear all of it, there's a sense of inevitability, and that you've been waiting for this. You know it. There's no way to stop it. It's just it's organic to the film, and it's a process of working back to front, which I said rarely, more frequently than rarely can work, depending on what the subject is, the music. That's a kind of architectural answer, I think, to a question that may have had to do more with the details of what comes first on the sketch, the string group, the bass line, or the tune, or whatever. And I think there's endless variation in all of that. I just think that every cue is its own animal. And